Welcome back. Now we answer questions we've received from you, our viewers. If you have a question, visit our website, QuranSpeaks.com. Dr. Shabir, I have a question here. The question is, how many followers did Jesus have? I guess in Islam, according to Islam.
Yeah, in the Islamic tradition, the number of followers are not mentioned. The Quran itself speaks about the Hawariyun, which is the word that is normally translated as disciples. Gabriel Said Reynolds has written an article about the Quranic presentation of the Hawariyun, and he says that a likely etymology of this term Hawariyun is that it comes from the idea of walking. So because the disciples basically walk with Jesus. And the Muslim commentators on the Quran took the etymology differently. They thought that it had something to do with whiteness, and they thought that the Hawariyun were dyers. They were dyeing things to make, bleaching garments to make them white and clean. So in any case, but the Quran does not mention the number of disciples, but in the Gospels, we notice that there is a mention of 12. In fact, this is an early idea because we saw already in Paul's letter to the Corinthians that he mentions the 12 and as a number of disciples. But academic scholars today think that this is a symbolic number, the number 12, because there were 12 tribes of Israel, and they think that the idea that there were 12 disciples is a later idea, mirroring the idea that there were 12 tribes of Israel. Names of the 12 disciples are given in the Synoptic Gospels, but the lists do not correspond exactly, and it is hard for scholars to reconstruct with confidence the names of the supposed 12 disciples of Jesus. Moreover, Luke's Gospel says in chapter 10 that Jesus sent out 70 persons. So these might be called apostles, ones who are sent out, as opposed to mathetai, which are disciples, Greek word for disciples. So maybe there are 12 disciples in that conception and 70 apostles. But the idea that there were just 12 disciples seems to be a Lucan idea. To differentiate between the original followers of Jesus and the many different persons who are claiming a close relationship with Jesus and his message, to distinguish between the pure original message and the later ones, which perhaps could be false. But that the idea that it was limited to 12 disciples, this does not really play out in academic discussions. So in the end, we have to say we don't know how many followers Jesus actually had. Luke's Acts of the Apostles says that after Jesus had been raised up into heaven, Peter stood up to speak to the group of followers there, and there were 120 persons. So does that mean only men, or men, women, and children? Does it mean only the persons who were in the room at that time, or does it mean like all of the followers altogether? But from that 120, we can see later on that in the Acts of the Apostles, it is mentioned that 3,000 people embraced the way in a single day, and there's a certain rapid rise. There's a sudden and rapid rise in the number of followers of Jesus. But this could be Luke's own exaggeration of the numbers, and God knows best. But looking at the historical records from the period, Tacitus, one of the historians, mentions that during the reign of Tiberius, nothing happened. And Tiberius reigned at a time when Jesus was in his adult years and up until the time of his supposed crucifixion. So it looks like altogether Christianity at that time was not a very large religion. Jesus did not have that many followers at that time.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Shabir.
You're welcome.
If you enjoyed this video, click like and subscribe. And please donate to support our work at QuranSpeaks.com.